Hey, gorgeous! Welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast with Holly Wharton, which combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business. This podcast features solo shows with Holly and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now, here's your host, Holly Wharton.
Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 148. This is your host, Holly Wharton. I'm here with today's special guest, Jaha Knight. As one of the nation's leading experts on business and strategy, clarity of purpose, and execution, branding Amazon, Jaha Knight is the founder of Karasi Media Group, a branding and marketing agency. Karasi Media Group is an agency focused on aligning technology with operational and marketing innovation across companies. Jaha works with entrepreneurs to build their business brands, dominate their niche, and serve clients with a consistent and repeatable experience. Jaha takes new entrepreneurs from A to Z in business by teaching them leadership strategies and how to develop and market their world-class talent into multiple streams of income. Welcome, Jaha.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Me too. I'm eager.
Right. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today?
Wow, my background. So this is always interesting. I have had about 60 plus jobs in a lifetime. And honestly, with those jobs, I've been in education, marketing, sales, all kinds of stuff. So with my background, what I always did, and my mom was so funny about this because she would always say, you always get a job, but you don't always keep it. And it was really a process for me to discover what I really loved and what I really did not like. So that's my background, but it's mostly education and marketing.
Excellent. And how did you go from having a job to having your own business?
Wow. Okay. So this is fun. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And when I moved to Atlanta, I gave myself 2 full years to figure that process out. I came here and I was like, I love blogging. This is so great. It's new. And then I was like, but how did they get paid though? Like, this is not making me any money. And then I said, well, you know what? I'm a writer. I'm going to write books. So I went out and started writing all these books. I had 7 books that I was publishing in a year. And look, when I go in, I go hard. So I went hard on those books. And then we were talking about earlier, I actually wrote all those books and I had a lady review one of the books. She was a beta reader for me. And she said, I hope you find your voice. It was one of the things that stood out to me in the message that she gave me, the review she gave me about the book, and it hurt my feelings. Yeah. And I was like, this lady doesn't know what she's talking about. My voice is right here, me, you know, like she's tripping. But the reality was she was right. I did not know my voice because I did not understand my brand. And not understanding the brand allowed me to create a bunch of throw it against the wall contact things, but it never stuck. It always slid down. So during that process of being a blogger and a podcaster and, an author, published author, I tried to give myself that time to say, well, what is it that you truly love? In the midst of that, I was actually going and speaking. I was speaking and stuff because I wrote books. So I was going to speak. So I went and, wrote these books and went out and spoke to these crowds, and that was great. But what I found was I went over to a conference, and when I went to that conference, it changed my entire life. I actually was sitting there. This lady proposed this program that was astronomical to me at the time because I was like, what is this? So I had a breakdown. I went into my room and I called my god sister crying, and she was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, what am I doing wrong in my life that I can't afford this program? And she was like, you're being melodramatic, really. And so when I saw that, she said, you need to go downstairs and figure out how you can turn those people into clients. I was like, a challenge I can bite into. I'm going downstairs. So I did. And I did turn a lot of those people into clients. But what it taught me was there was something inside of me that was growing. I was shifting and changing. And even before we had gotten over there, a friend of mine is the one that it was a conference in California. So she was the one that proposed the conference. When we got there, what I found was I was already growing. I was telling her, oh, I want to change the people I'm around because these people aren't doing anything. I want a big change to happen for me. And she said, Jaha, you need to come with me to this conference. And I went. And when I got there were so many phenomenal women in the room. It was scary. I mean, living their real dreams, not working for anyone. They were like, girl, come on. I felt like a watercolor in a Technicolor program.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, look at these women and they were dancing around the room and I'm sitting there and I literally was a watercolor. I had on a lavender shirt and khaki pants. Wondering if anyone's looking at me because I'm changing before their eyes. And I was like, nobody's looking at a watercolor when you have all these bold, vibrant colors. That's what I was telling myself. And what it boiled down to was my own self-doubt and my own self-worth. Mm-hmm. It was being called into question and put in front of me and said, to me, it was like, you have to change. I got back home. I was working this job where I was the assistant marketing director for this company. And I was working there and every day I would drive there after this conference I had went to, and my giant would keep peeking out. She was being bold and showing the colors. I was like, girl, get back in there. You got to be a watercolor today, And we would drive to the job, and all my giant gifts. That's why I call my giant gifts and talents kept coming out. My job didn't know anything about my real life. No, I was podcasting or I had written books, nothing. And when I finally told my boss, he was asking me because I was going to another conference to speak because, I wrote books. And he said, why are you going to this conference? I said, oh, because I'm speaking there. He said, speaking. And this is how crazy this is, because I know this is a pretty long story, but this is how crazy it is. I barely talked at work. When you asked me a question, I answered it. I went back into my office. I did not give you any outside information about me. No one knew that I had these podcasts or these books or anything about my life. So I had literally separated my world so that they wouldn't touch. Like how you have the food on the plate and you separate it out so they don't touch. And so he said, you're going to speak, and what are you hoping to do? He said, are they paying you? I said, no, but I hope to sell some books. You wrote a book? I said, yeah, I wrote a book. I have 7 books. 7 books? I haven't written a book. And I was like, oh, Lord, you should have never said that. That was my giant. She was just showing her butt. And I felt that it was great because what I ended up doing after I got back from that conference was I quit. Not quit, but I resigned. I let him know that I was leaving because I felt marginalized. There was so much about me that I couldn't share there. I couldn't just be me. And it was so frustrating. I was like, you know what? Y'all are paying me this mediocre salary. I went over across the water and this lady is telling me I'm great. And I come back over here. You're telling me to be mediocre. I can't do this anymore. So I came home and I cried because I literally panicked. I was like, what are you going to do? You have no plan.
How can you quit a job without a plan?
I had no plan. I was like, this is crazy. So yeah, I came home and I had that little breakdown, and literally the first client that I had was from that conference I spoke at. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. And it just kept growing from there.
Wow, that's excellent. I love that leap of faith that you took.
Yeah, it really was. I was scared. Anyway.
So how is it that you managed to write 7 books in a year, which is impressive in its own, but not find your voice? Because I think a lot of people think that the more you write, the more you'll find your voice.
Especially after being a blogger,
Yeah.
I knew that something was wrong with the way I was writing once I figured out what my brand was. Immediately after I quit that job, I sat down and I thought about it, because that was one of the things that opened me up in California, was the fact that she was talking about things. I had been in business since 2002. Mm-hmm. And this was like 2013. Mm-hmm. And I was like, when they were talking on the stage, I was like, what are they saying? Systems? What is this? Like, brand. Okay, well, what does that mean? I literally sat in my house for 2 months after that working on this workbook.
Wow.
And this workbook was really my way of figuring out what my brand was. And so my friends would call me and be like, well, John, what you doing? I'm working on this workbook. I said, yeah, I'm going to sell it. They were like, girl, bye. Like, you're going to sell
another book.
Yeah, nobody wants a workbook. What do you say? And it turned into my actual academy.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's surprising how because it was my process of figuring out what they were talking about in the conference, the pieces of business that I had been missing for a decade. It's like, so I was sitting there like, systems. Okay, because this is back in the day, I was sending out invoices manually and they were on paper and people would have to send me stuff through PayPal. It was just ridiculous. Nothing was automated. And what the finding my voice piece came in. So to get back to that point, the finding my voice piece came in when I sat there for that 2 months and figured out what I really needed to do. I had to clean up my blog. If you go back to that Wayback Machine, you'll see everything on my blog except for me. Like one fellow podcaster asked me on his show, but he said, what do you talk about except for this? I was like, what do you, boy, I help people with their business. He was like, I don't see that on your website. I was like, are you serious? I had a podcast that was so big. The brand of it was so big that it overshadowed my business. And I had it all on one website. And he was like, I didn't know that's what you did. I was like, wow. So that opened my eyes as well. And it made me clean up my site because I was like, yeah, this is taking over what you're trying to do. So I took that podcast, which still runs today. I still have it, but my co-hosts run it now. But they're the ones that do it. But that podcast is on a separate website. You don't even see it on my site anymore. And I appreciate that about, separating that out. But it helped me to process. And I used to be afraid to talk about God. I used to be afraid to let my faith show because in corporate and in education, you're not allowed.
Yeah.
There were so many rules that you weren't allowed to share. Yeah. And because of that, I was scared at first, but it was like I don't want to call it it was a cleansing.
Yeah.
It was like washing off corporate America and becoming more of me. So the awakening happened first, and then I had to uncover myself. Like rediscover who I was because I had not been showing that. Like I'm giving advice in these nonfiction books and writing novels, but I'm not really showing who I really am. And that's when I started to find my voice when I said, okay, who are you? Why are you afraid to show that to the world? And if you're afraid to show that to the world, then you're still being fraudulent. So to be my authentic self, like they always say, you have to be yourself and being unapologetic about that. I had to literally share who I was for real, like behind the scenes. I'm a poem. I'm an artist, but I'm a businesswoman.
Excellent. So once you started being unapologetic about sharing yourself, talking about God, your relationship with spirituality, all the other parts of yourself that you've been hiding for so long, how did that transform your business?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I brought other believers to the table. That's actually the only type of client I work with is the people who actually believe what I believe because they're motivated by the same goals. And I think that's the thing that most people don't realize when they find or they discover their target audience is that a lot of times that comes from your target audience is really a part of the community you already belong to. And so for me, it was an easy transition into allowing myself to share who I was with the world and all that good stuff.
Excellent. So, Jaha, what are your top tips on how other women can find their voice and how that aligns with their branding?
Ooh, I like this question. So I'm going to give you, 3 top tips on how to find their voice and their branding. So I work with ladies about this all the time because, you already know what I do. And in the coaching profession where I help my ladies to discover, and I'll give you all the same tips I give them, we start out with figuring out who they are, not figuring out what your business is. And I think that's the delineation there, is discovering who you really are and what your brand story is. So understanding your brand story, almost everything comes from that. And the brand story is that pivotal moment where you said, enough of this bullshniggity. I'm ready to be out here. I'm ready to be out here in the world doing exactly what I was created to do. And you are now becoming more of you. That's the awakening. And when you write that story, that helps to provide context to every part of what you are now creating in your business. And it actually helps you with the idea of who your target audience is as well. That's how you find your voice. You find your voice by working on that story, discovering what you were actually purposed to do, not your mission, not your vision, but your purpose. Mm-hmm. And when you figure out your purpose, which I think people really, they toggle back and forth with thinking their purpose and their mission is the same. Mm-hmm. The purpose is actually the call on your life. Mm-hmm. Has nothing to do with you being a business coach or a fitness coach or a life coach or any of those things. Your purpose is so totally different from what you do. I think that my purpose has always been the same. So when you think about your purpose, what were you created and designed to do? We discovered that first in our work together. And when we figured that part out, then we work on what the mission is. The mission is like a car. You jump in it and you drive several short distances to get to fulfill the mission of your life. So your mission may be the life coaching thing or the business coaching thing. Your mission is so different. And then your vision. Your vision is what wakes you up every morning. So figuring out what your voice is a combination of your purpose, your mission, your vision, your target audience, and your brand story. Okay. I gave you 5. I'm an overachiever. There you go.
Perfect. Okay. This, I think, is hugely challenging. So for women who maybe come from a corporate background or come from a life of just doing stuff that wasn't aligned with what they really meant to be doing on this planet, how do you help them get back in touch with who they are and peel off all that crap that they've kind of built up over time?
I listen to them. It's the craziest thing, but I teach my ladies to listen to learn when they're in my academy. And I listen to my ladies. And this is crazy because when I started this business, I was doing brand identity development. My coach, literally, I said, no, I want to coach. She was like, no, go out with this first. And I was like, but I did it. And in the process of that year, because I've been in business full time, 2 years now, in the process of that year, I practiced. Because every design, every website we built, every identity we developed, we had to peel off the layers of the woman so that we could actually show who she really was visually. So that was a process. And you'd be surprised at how my ladies would come back and just cry. They'd be like, Jaha, I'm so glad that I ran into you because I didn't know that this is what this process was. It was more than I just signed up for you to develop my brand. And you literally, because we didn't just do their websites, we also created their logos and all, and we would take their pictures and put them in spaces that they weren't even in the photo. And they're just like, so the process of uncovering them was always the same. And it's, I guess, part of my process for them because I knew what I went through. It was very hard. And then I read their stories, like when we work on their messaging in their brand, I read through their stories and I tell them when they're giving me crap. Or when we were doing the identity part, we have a brand lookbook. They don't show us like websites. We actually create a lookbook, and that lookbook comes from within. We peel back some of the stuff that you wanted to hide, and then we look at it and we give you a assessment of what that lookbook means. And typically that then turns into visuals. So the whole process of that uncovering of them and showing them more of who they are is like holding up a mirror so that they can say, I'm beautiful just the way I am. I'm gorgeous just the way I am. Everything about me is good. I am not the regrets and the recriminations and the doubts and the fears, and I'm not those things. And they helped me to rewrite the book that the lady told me was utter voiceless.
Mm.
So I rewrote that book. It's called Step Into Your Greatness. And it's now not even a book, it's a course. So that process that I take them through is them working through that workbook that my friends, it all came back together. The workbook that my friends were like, girl, what are you doing? You're still working on that workbook. It all came back to that space and allowed them to now say, this is who I really am. I literally just finished talking to a lady yesterday about stepping into her greatness, because this process is great, but if you're in business and you're still having those fears, that's what keeps you from acting. Mm-hmm. It's actually what keeps you from executing and implementing. And my ladies they look to me for accountability for the implementation of their businesses. And so when we were doing especially the web design, and now with the business coaching, I'm their person. Like, I'm like, hey, why don't you get this done? And then they tell me their stuff, and I'm like, you're rolling your turds in glitter. I need you to get that done tomorrow. Like, and they're like, okay, thanks, John, for listening. So
now, this takes a huge mindset shift, because I think so often we believe that we're not perfect the way they are, the way that we are. And, we look at other people who seem to be doing so much more than we are, so much better than we are. How do you help your clients get to the point where they can just accept, this is who I am, and discover the great stuff about them that makes them unique?
I don't judge them. Mm. And when they go into Step Into Your Greatness, Step Into Your Greatness really is about their transformation into the person that they need to be. Mm-hmm. And that mindset shift is really huge, because they've always known it. They just didn't feel like they could do it or say it or even be bold about it. But look at all the stories in the Bible. I don't know if you're in the same space with me with that, but I'm just saying all the stories in the Bible were of imperfect people. And Jesus still went and helped and talked to them and God had them write books in the Bible. I mean, these were some deeply flawed individuals, and God still chose to use them. Mm-hmm. So my biggest thing when I talk to my ladies is, you have to understand that the purpose for your life is tattooed on the inside of your heart. You just have to rediscover that and allow yourself to be all of what God wanted you to be when He sent you down here. Your soul was not tainted when you were sent here. You got all that other stuff while you walk this earth. It's not about you being a perfect person. It's about you working in your imperfectness to continue to get better and to be better for yourself, your family, your friends, and to call them also to a higher standard. And if they're not willing to step up to that higher standard, sometimes you have to lay them off, because you're the boss in your life. Like, sometimes you have to lay them off, and then sometimes you can go back and say, come on, girl, I was in a season. I'm out of that right now. I still need you, but sometimes you have to actually fire some people in your life so that you can get in a better space. One of the podcasts I was doing was called Lady Entrepreneur. And this to me was preparation. I loved it. It was like preparation for my entrepreneur journey, because when I was doing that show, I was still working full time. Mm-hmm. And the ladies that I would have on, they would say stuff like, my signature question was, who are the 5 people that you are hanging out with? Like, who are your top 5? And they would tell me, and I'm literally sitting there listening to these women, and I'm like, and that's what, remember when I said I had that thought process before I even went to California, I need to change these people I'm around, because they put it in my head to do it. Like, they were just like, girl, the people that I'm around are achievers, and I stay in a mastermind program or some type of coaching one-on-one with someone because I need to stay around achievers, or I'm in a community of achievers. That all of that stuff transitions you to be where you need to go, or transitions you before you're ready. And I didn't even know I was preparing. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you do things and you don't even know that's what's going on, but you end up,
Yeah, you end up there in the end.
Exactly.
Excellent. So, Jaha, how can other women who may be listening to this work with you? You've got online programs, you've got group programs. What are the options there?
Okay, so women that are on the podcast, I brought you all something great. I brought you all a great gift. Nice. So it is revolution, and I always say I will revolutionize the way you think about business. And so, of course, ode to Prince. Hello. But Revolution is a free brand audit because typically you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I know that my ladies always say that they're like, girl, you don't know what you don't know. But you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like every person deserves to have a business consultant, even if they are a solopreneur. Mm-hmm. And so Revolution is a free brand audit for your business, and you get 30 free minutes of brand conversation with me. Excellent. So that we can talk about your results of your brand audit.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we'll include a link to that in the show notes so that people can check in. Great. Great. Now, Jaha, do you have any women business mentors? Are there any women entrepreneurs who inspire you?
Oh my goodness, yes. Of course, I have business crushes, and I have a mentor, which is my / coach. Her name is Melissa Alaba. She is phenomenal. She is a vision coach to the gods. So she's awesome. I really love her. She has helped me tremendously in my business. I will say Lisa Nichols, of course, she's been a mentor for me because she was the woman whose conference I went to, and it changed my entire life. And then Melissa was my mastermind coach for a while. Allison Bird was one of my coaches as well. So I would say that they are business mentors now because they've all inspired me to some degree because I work with them in some capacity. I would say I work with Lisa, but that was conference work, but it's the same.
Yeah. Excellent. So Jaha, where can people find you online? What's the best place to go?
They can go to brandingamazon.com. That is where they would get the free business audit, the brand audit. So, and it covers great stuff. So it covers your business, your marketing, your mindset, and then we discover where the synapses are not firing so that we can, figure out how you can make that work out better for yourself. But they can find me there, and that would be a great place for them to go to start.
Excellent. And what are your favorite social networks to hang out on?
Oh, I love Periscope. Like, it's awesome. So Periscope is my thing. I love it. I am at Branding Amazon there. Every social network is at Branding Amazon, actually.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm glad that you invited me. And thank you all for listening to me go down memory lane. I appreciate it.
Well, I think your stories are really, really useful because, like I said, it's so tempting for people to just say, I'll just write a whole ton of books and it'll work, or I'll just write some copy for my website, or I'll just do this or that. But it's like, unless you really understand what it is that you're trying to communicate, you might end up connecting with all the wrong people.
And that is so true. And you'd be surprised when people say, I wrote a book in 30 days. And I'm sitting there like, girl, just keep living. Like, you don't even have this other stuff together. It's so frustrating. And that's actually why I changed my business model. It used to be the brand identity first. And then we would, in there, I would give you some strategy sessions. But now the only way to get to the brand identity is to come through my academy, because I realized working with the ladies, which I love, they were phenomenal, and they still are because I still work with them. My purpose partners, they actually, I had people that would come to me that weren't my purpose partners, and they did not have a clue as to what their business was. They just wanted a website. And so when you talk to people that are not aligned with your core purpose, it really does spark, like, all money is not good money, and you get to choose. So for me, I was choosing not to be in relationship with people who had no clue and did not want to have a clue about their mission or their business or their purpose, nothing. So, and I didn't want to take their money and put up a nice, beautiful website, but at the end of the day, they couldn't make money off of it. So included in that was their systems. And it was so crazy to me because as I would hear what they're doing, like some of these people were authors and they would come and talk to you, and you're just like, but that's not how that works, though. Can I jump? It's almost like double dutch. You're waiting to jump into the space of the jumping because the person is not really the one turning the ropes. And it's like, let me help you. But then so that's why I had to step back. That's why still none of my books are republished. None. I was like, no, I'm not.
I looked when I was doing research on you before the episode. Of course I did.
Probably found one out there, but the rest of them, I pulled them all back because I couldn't figure out how to get that one off. But
but it's not available for purchase, so you're safe.
So it was all of that, and that the writing of books is so important and good and personable. And when people use it just to be a speaker, like, oh, I'm going to speak, so I'm gonna write a book. And it's like, but is that your best work? Is that your voice? Are you really,
And is that your best form of expression?
Exactly. It was so good. That lady giving me that advice was the best because it really made me look at things and when everything connected, it was like, I see what she means now. Like, I didn't even realize. And it was so good. So I appreciate her. I thank her from the bottom of my heart if she's out there listening and she remembers me, because she really did help me to discover that your voice is not something that is paint by numbers. I wrote, everybody can write, but when you are truly writing what resonates for you and is your truth, it's so much different.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much for joining us today. I absolutely loved your stories, and I think you've got really, really practical advice on how to dig deep and get to the core of what your brand is so that you can find your voice.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Holly.
You're welcome. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/148 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed at hollywharton.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you.